Good morning, everyone. Microphone check. Screen check. Looks like everything's working correctly here. Yeah, wonderful. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Friday. Finally Friday. Hopefully everyone has been able to rest up and get ready for the day, and we can rock and roll into this week ahead. Of course, the end of the week, rather, the weekend ahead. One of those two. Before we jump in, as always, on the left side of the screen there, make sure to read through the Live Trader Morning Prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that is inside there. Keep in mind, it is Friday. My daughter is home with me on Fridays. She doesn't go anywhere, so she hangs out with me, and that does mean that there'll probably be some background noise and some interruptions and normal family things. So just keep that in mind as we go into this Friday. I just want to take a second as well to give a shout out to our latest members that joined overnight and yesterday. Thank you so much for the support. I'm pumped to have you on the family here with SSFTG. If you aren't a member yet and you're looking to join, there are a few different ways to do it. One of the easiest ways is join button right below the stream, right? You can click that button to gain access before the next private webinar, the Discord chat, you gain access to that, and of course, you get that awesome badge next to your name, which always looks really cool on YouTube here. If you're trying to figure out what it is exactly that we're doing, look no further than the Day Trading Academy. You can find that over on SSFTG. It comes packed with 19 plus hours of material loaded for you, and that doesn't include the hundreds of hours that we've got here on YouTube as well. Now, with YouTube in mind, please keep in mind that it does have about a 3 to 30 second delay, depending on where you're logging in from. That can definitely have an impact on things. But if you want to level up to the full VIP status, you can enjoy the exclusive permanent access to our non-delayed live analysis stream over on Zoom, as well as monthly VIP webinars, private VIP events, one-on-one scheduling access, all kinds of cool stuff. So whether you're here and you're totally new or you're a veteran over on the VIP stream, welcome. I'm glad to have you here with me today as we wrap up this week going into Friday. So let's take a look at some news, take a look at some charts, see what's going on today, and jump in. Don't forget to grab your morning DP levels as they're posted for you this morning for the major 7 markets that we take a look at. I feel like I'm going to have to start expanding this thing out to include basically every crypto now. This is insane. Anyway, make sure to grab those levels so that you have all of those ready to rock and roll. Taking a look across the board here, we've got, first off, side note, finally the euro has dipped down into that long zone. Finally. Upside objectives are back up to 21,550. We'll get back to that in a second. Starting off on the NASDAQ, we've got some pretty sideways action here, and it's having a hard time doing much of anything, really. I mean, technically, that was a higher low. What a vicious higher low that was, huh? So looking at that, the one thing that we've been kind of talking about are these previously trapped traders. And a lot of sellers, I guarantee, would have been looking for that continuation move to the downside. And, well, the POC started at the top. But if we bring this a little bit further forward to that higher low that they created, we still have the POC up at the top. Finally, we have the... Oh, no, they didn't change it. Oh, man, I thought they shifted the POC. All right, well, they never shifted the POC, so that's a lot of information. There wasn't actually enough accumulation to get their average down, which means likely, although there was still a huge amount of building into this, again, the assumption here would be that they were longs up here that were trying to get the breakout move, and they got dumpstered. Realistically, that could have also been sellers taking profit at the lows. Either way you want to look at it, there was not enough volume down here to take over the POC. That's important because when the market rolled back up, what did it have to do? It's got to break back above that POC as proof. It did it initially, broke above a new high, and it's fairly obvious buyers were buying into that pullback, but good old NASDAQ needed that one extra leg to vindict everybody out before it finally rolled back up, and then decided to come back nice and clean for a quick little bounce there. It's been chopping around that area for quite a while, and if we look without adding any of the extra volume yet, we can see that it was a defense point, defense. You can see the buyers doing all of this work here to try to get the job done, and their objective is to get up to the highs, and, well, they did, and it looks like they exited everything that they've ever owned. It just got blasted off of the top all the way down to the lows, and that's going to shake some confidence. If there were still longs here, realistically, they're going to want to see it go back up, stay above. Well, it did go back up, but it did not stay above, and then it rolls back over and underneath. Now, we can also see, looking forward a little bit more on that the quick little high there, where was the POC on this overall move? Right there, is the POC. And again, you can see the shift of control and all of that. But that was the objective we were talking about yesterday, how they've got to decisively break above that. This is what happens when they don't. They couldn't get the job done, and they rolled all the way back over. I don't think they've made a low again. Is this another one of those vindictive lows? It looks like it, at least so far. All right, well, at the moment, now given this context and the fact that they could not even shift a POC down here, realistically, I have to assume that these are very reliably shorts, and they're holding the market down, and they've just gained more proof. So that's important because now I'm expecting more continuation down. And if that continuation fails, it's probably going to take a while for it to fail. Of course, now that I've said that, it's going to be a V bottom. But if it's going to roll back up, we need to see a bottom-weighted POC or something shift in order to take control away from the sellers. Because right now, the sellers are pure owners. They've taken over, and we just got to stay out of their way for now, try to go with the trend. Same goes for the S&P, but if we look at the S&P, it has been significantly more bullish than the NASDAQ. Let's start over here, up to this highest point, because this other one was not a higher high. This was a lower high, good old S&P. We've got the POC hovering right around the 41, 81, 50s. And that was, I mean, obviously, the majority of that was created right inside there. So again, put yourself in the shoes of the assumable buyers. If these were shorts and they were trying to get the market to go down, they got just crushed. When it came back, they were given a chance to get out of break even. And if these were buyers who were buying into this move, well, they were rewarded pretty well, right? And now all of a sudden it's back at their break even point and it's hovering. Ooh, you can feel some pressure, right? We've got to get away from here for the buyers to take this back up. And if we start losing ground on the S&P, especially if the NASDAQ kind of drags it down, you can see it's a pretty wide open door. There's no POC cluster until maybe back here. Let's see. Did the NASDAQ shift it? Or the S&P? Oh, great. Bugged volume. Perfect timing. There we go. Okay, so the S&P did shift the POC down. Totally different story. So in this case, if it does dive lower, buyers will be looking to reload, but they're going to be looking to reload way down here, 41.25. I mean, we got a ways. We got a little ways to go. We might not hit that today. It is a Friday, and Fridays are typically the bigger movers out of them, so maybe. Either way, the bull side is looking a little bit tough. Over on gold, man, gold just looks like a mess. We've got this kind of falling wedge, which, I mean, it did not look like it was going to do anything, but sure enough, it did. It came all the way back up and treated as resistance. Next time around, they couldn't quite get the job done. But as it stands, I mean, really, you can see that this is still a megaphone. There's a lot of different ways to draw it. The more obvious one is the one that we were just looking at here. But you could also draw it off of, at the time at least, expansion trying to get the blow off on the lows, because that was also making higher highs, and that was also a hold on the high. So, I mean, they're all over the place. The one obvious thing that does stand out, outside of the fact that this is just kind of stuck in a range, is that the move that came into this, right, was bullish. Nice bullish continuation back to the upside until right here. Then we've got those lower highs, 3 of them, in fact. Gotta love those 3s. And then we start continuing a trend to the downside. But what happened when we came down to the major last swing low? Right, that was the last major swing low, and major in the sense of, and we covered this in the academy as well, but what I'm talking about here is confirmed swings, right? So confirmed swings, we've got swing, confirmed. I mean, this one's a little bit shaky, isn't it? Technically speaking, if you start going into the micro scale, those would be confirms, and that would be the first break. Realistically, once you see this back and forth price action, since we're trying to get to over here, then we can look in hindsight and say, it makes more sense that we had this, and they just kind of expanded out. So this is the last major swing that we've had. And when the market came back to that, it was not shy about showing up with the bulls. But big problem, they couldn't make it to the highs. They actually stopped on that megaphone from the narrower sense. Once it rolled back over, they pierced through the lows and then jumped right. Whoa, how did my mouse end up over there? And then jumped all the way back up. Very realistically, swing buyers are going to be looking for a kick back off of that area on the inside swing, because they know the risk is light. They don't have to risk very much, but the reward is way back up to the top. Huge reward. I mean, even on the inside swings, if you wanted to play it safe, that's still easily like, what, maybe a 3-to-1, 3.5. There's a lot of distance to the upside that buyers would love on that deeper pullback. They just got to see that little bit of an inside dip. Over on the crude oil, we've got a pullback, finally. So eventually it's bound to happen, right? If we look at the lows on this most recent low, they did cycle off of an L5. That's pretty obvious. I mean, we don't even have to draw that one up, but it's there. And once we continued back to the upside, typically at an L5, you expect to see an L2. An L5 is a really deep dip. Now, in this case, it actually pulled back to an L1 and just kept going. The next pullback, L1. Next pullback, L1. We've got an L1 breakaway trend. Eventually, usually when there's an undertow, right, there's a heads up that we're going to get a deeper pullback. In this case, the market made a massive new high, but the MACD double topped and said, well, might want to pump the brakes a little bit. Stay tuned. Maybe an L1 might not be the best option this time around. We can see the L1 buyers still did give it a shot. And then they also exited at break even and then rolled the market all the way back down. We're expecting a deeper dip here. L2s, or preferably now, since we've been so detached from this massive L5 down here, a quick little flush down to L3 back at that 63 point. Now, there's a couple reasons why that 63 point is interesting. Obviously, that would be the L3, and it's the deeper dip that this double top would be expecting. And we also have a new low, side note, massive negative divergence. Right here, and it's still building. The MACD hasn't even come close to turning higher. So as far as timing, it might still be pretty early. But if we look at the volume move on the downside, before that higher low, we have the POC cluster, which was hovering kind of back here. Right now, obviously, this spent a lot of time down here. So if we move this just a bit further forward to that next higher low, bump that backward a little bit. We've got the POC, which ended up hovering at around 61.80 by the time it actually broke away. Now, once the market starts rallying back to the upside, it's very obvious that the buyers have defensively bought into this in hindsight, right? So now we can see, well, where would their objectives possibly be? Typically 2-to-1, right? So if we've got the 1-to-1 and... Where the heck did my 2-to-1 go? It hid. Oh, it hid back behind the L1. We can see that they got their 2-to-1. Then it spiked all the way through, got a 3-to-1, and rejected back down. Now we've got lower high and deeper dips. It really, this just seems like a lot of buyers were given a lot of icing on the cake, and they took it. And now we're seeing a lot of profit taking on the down move. So realistically, while this market's pulling back, we need to see not only the volume come back to previous zones of interest, preferably really deep, like 61.80s, but the L3s. We also need to see the volume on this move lower shift, because we're going to have a POC right in the middle. Yep. And they were trying to buy for that continuation leg, and they got slammed. It doesn't mean that they're going to give up, but in order for them to kind of get this thing going, we're going to need to see some volume building up here. Little shallow hints of accumulation. We'll see what they can do with that. Over on the euro, this was a swing from yesterday that that I was waiting for. Never pulled back yesterday. Finally got it in the overnight last night. But if we look at this move, the reason why I like this zone is this is the area where the market really broke out of. And you can see when the market came back and retested it, they were not shy about the bullishness. And now that we're back, I like this area again to try to get this continuation back to the upside. Now, it has had some time to progress. So given the overall movement here, as far as the actual risk goes, even though I am looking for a much larger objective, actual risk objectives on the 2-to-1 scale would be at 21,095, and I have to respect it given the way that this is moving. So that's going to be my first objective on the narrower term for at least one of them, but I am still looking for that way, way bigger target up there, and I'll let this progress. If it makes another new low, then I will adjust my actual 2-to-1 target. I'll keep going with it as far as it needs to go. At the moment, though, it is building in that move for a nice volume shift and continuation. The one caveat that we do have, I mean, it's at the lows of the it's hard to ask for much more than this. The only thing that does kind of stand out is that it's potentially a little bit early. We're bouncing off of it. We're showing some good support, but we haven't really separated away. And a lot of buyers will wait for that obvious separation before trying to get a retest. So it is a bit early to the party. So as far as the actual risk 2-to-1s, that might change. But for right now, it's looking all right. We've got a deeper move and a nice negative divergence if you look at both of those. So still looking good for continuation up. It's just a matter of when it decides to do it. Give me 1 second here. All right. Over on Bitcoin, we've got that continuation back to the upside. If we look at the overall movement, again, I mean, this is another one of those just screaming L1 trends. It actually didn't pull back to an L1 until finally over here. Jeez. Started pulling back. We've got another L1 bounce. But again, that L1 bounce was very quickly rejected at the highs. That tells you to expect a deeper pullback. Typically, when they're going to break an L1, you'd like to see an L2. But we were talking about yesterday the concern of Bitcoin in that it's just really left the station aggressively. And very frequently, reversals don't happen without an L3 at least, preferably an L4 or L5. Very infrequently, but during excruciatingly strong trends, will you have an L2 continuation, which is what we're seeing right now. So I say a concern because if the buyers don't keep this going to the upside, well, we can see the concern play out and we get the deeper pullback. I don't even think that was partially English, but we get the deeper pullback back down to the L3, maybe the L4s back to that 50K, big psychological level. So you can see the buyers need to show up here. I don't want to draw the volume on here because it'll crash the charts. But we did get the deeper pullback. The undertow kind of gave a heads up for that anyway. We've got the L2. That's what they're trying to get continuation to the upside for at the moment. We'll see if they can keep it going. Over on Ethereum, Ethereum is just kind of range bound. I think they poked an all-time high. Did they poke an all-time high again? Or did they miss it? Oh, jeez, really? Gonna make me work for it, huh? What's the high? 2,800 exactly. 2,800 exactly. So an exact to the tick double top at 2,800. That would lead me to believe that there's probably a seller looking at selling 2,800. Chances are, if we were to look at Coinbase volume, there's probably a big block of volume up at the top dominating everything else. That's why I don't like Coinbase volume, aside from the fact that it crashes the charts. But we can see here again, you know, this thing is just screaming to the upside. But remember what we were just talking about on Bitcoin. In order for a reversal to take place, they need to have an L4 or an L5, typically, in order for it to maintain a healthy bias. If we look at this deepest move, because this is actually the low, way over here. If we look at that move, it had the deep L5. And then when it finally pulled back because it never made a new low, that was nothing more than another L5. And now we're rotating back up again. So now that we've had a double L5 confirmation, what do we typically expect to see after an L5? An L2. If the market's going to pull back for value buyers, that's the spot, right? An L2. That's a negative 1 DP. It's below the previous swing. So as far as trap accumulation goes, it's incredible. We've got a massive undertow that hasn't stopped being an undertow for like the last week. This needs a pullback in order to maintain health. We were talking yesterday and kind of joking facetiously in a way, how it hasn't even broken a major swing low. Like there's literally no pullback on Ethereum. None whatsoever. Since they put that low in on the 23rd, from a swing low perspective, there has been zero. Not a single one. So this thing has no pullbacks, technically. It needs one, right? So as far as a pullback goes, a deep L1 would be great. I mean, an L2 would be even better. Any lower than that would just be icing on the cake. And they get another L4, L5. Ooh, lordy. Start backing up the truck. That's where things get really interesting. Way up here, it's tough for anybody to want to do anything. There's a whole lot of congestion. There's a whole lot of back and forth. Buyers don't really want to buy this far up. They know they're kind of forced to, like we were talking about yesterday. They have to hold Ethereum. But at this point, I think they've accumulated enough where they don't necessarily feel the pressure to have to buy a huge amount around this area yet. Keep in mind, a lot of transactions do happen at all-time highs. So from an exchange perspective, when you're underneath the all-time highs, you kind of have to build up a little bit with the assumption that if it does go back through the highs, we're probably going to get a lot more orders coming in, and they have to have the flow for that. Along with that, they also have to have the flow for deeper moves. So they don't want to buy too high because then they're going to be at a loss. So it's this delicate balance that has to happen right now, and they can't do it way up here when it's not pulling back. Puts people in a really awkward situation. We'll see what happens. But, man, Ethereum making me a bit nervous. We'll see. Anyway, looking at the news before we dive into the NASDAQ completely here. Earlier this morning, we didn't have any large news. There were some medium news announcements with the PCE price indexes, personal spending, all of that. Pretty bullish across the board, to be fair. Neutral to bullish, everything up. As we go into the afternoon, there are no large news announcements. So we have a Friday with nothing going on. Aside from the normal stuff, CFTC speculative net positions, U.S. Baker Hughes oil rig count, Dallas Fed stuff. It's all minor. There's not really a whole lot going on. So early in, early out, head off to the weekend kind of thing, I think is going to be the mentality. Looking at the NASDAQ on the daily, whoo, man, that's tough. That's real tough. That 14.024.75, I mean, we can't get away from this stupid thing, right? This is that previous all-time high break. They closed on top of it, and just like every other time they've closed on top of it, it tends to get stuck there for a good week. In this case, we're going on 2 weeks now. We can't get away from here. Got a lot of congestion. Barely making new highs, vindictive highs. And we've got this gigantic engulfing bear candle, kind of doji-ish thing, that has engulfed the last 4 days. So given the fact that it's engulfed the last 4 days, we kind of have to approach that candle with the mentality of, hey, that could very easily be a huge zone of support or resistance. So if we're looking at the bar and price snapping, we'll put it on the lows, and that's got to go on all charts. And let's make this hot pink. If I hit no, does it still bug it? Because it says it's all charts. No, it doesn't. Whatever. So 14.020. All right, and then I'm going to have to do the line over here. All right. Thanks, Daily. I'm going to have to come back to you in a second. What was the high of that one? Oh. 64 exact. Okay. What? Come here, line. Yes, 64. All right. Those are going to be the extremes. And likely what the market fights over today. If they fail at the lows to go lower, then we'll probably see them reject and potentially even challenge all the way back up to the highs. What a nuts move. So on the daily perspective, this thing is looking for a potential pullback. The first pullback is going to be at around the L1. Be hovering at around the... Well, just in case. I don't know if we're actually going to hit it, but... It's a little bit further up, though. 730, we'll say 739. 739. This is also hot pink, but I'll make this dash dot so I know that in this case, this is that zone of interest in that area once we get down there. If it gets down there, just in case, right? Fridays, you never know. Fridays are like the Wild West. This thing could be all the way up at all-time highs with the giant engulfing bull candle by the end of the day. So just being prepared. As far as the 60-minute goes, the 60-minute is still in that nice deep pullback area. If we look at the overall, very obvious on both sides of this as far as a range is concerned. Sellers selling at the highs, buyers buying at the lows, and the POC smack in the middle. Everybody's taking profit in the middle. If we zoom out a little, get that out of the way and go a bit closer into what's been going on. The more recent leg to the upside was very quickly reversed. So I'm kind of curious if we take that all the way up and we see what kind of volume happened here. Actually, I don't want that. I want the bull bar. Don't want the bear bar. Okay, so at this point in time, buyers were built up with an average, and the assumption is buyers given that it went up, right? It came back down and they defended initially, And then it closed underneath again. When it came back, it closed up again. Maybe, maybe not. Closed under, they all gave up. And if they didn't give up, you can see they gave up right there. So they were waiting for that proof, and you can see how much patience they can have sometimes. Keep in mind, I suppose when you can just print more money, it's fairly easy to have patience. But in this case, if they were buying here, they attempted to defend, maybe even bought a little bit more in the dip. Actually, I'm guarantee you they did. Once it starts coming back up, it closes above. Like, okay, give it a second, see what it wants to do. A little more continuation up. Hey, let's take some off here now. Let's lighten the load. Had to take a little bit of risk on that one, and we'll see. It doesn't want to keep going up. If it wants to, cool. Oh, crap, it didn't. All right, get me out. Gone. I mean, immense amount of patience. Significant amounts more patience than I would ever have. If we're looking at this as a zone, it's fairly obvious accumulation volume. So again, I'm assuming that these are buyers. And from that perspective, they have officially given up now, if they hadn't already given up over here. So with this rotation to the downside, again, it's clear for takeoff to the sell side. But we got to get underneath this 1850. That's a big roadblock right now. There's a heck of a lot of support coming in. So while this market is diving lower, let's start with a high candle. And actually, that is a higher low, technically. So the initial drive down. Their POC was right in the middle, too. Lovely. They go a little bit further up, and now we have a higher low. Technically, what's the POC looking like? Still stuck in the middle at 905s. So we can take a couple different assumptions here. If these are longs, which it's accumulation volume down to that POC, I think it's fair, right? I could safely assume that these are buyers. If these are buyers, they're not feeling too great right now. So what I would like to see for the sellers, if they are going to maintain downward pressure, is cycle off of this negative 1 DP, because this is pretty far down. Go back up into like the negative half, maybe a little bit above it. I don't really want to see it fill the gap. And hold somewhere around those 905s all the way up to the 920s. That's kind of the zone of interest. So from that perspective, on the 60-minute chart, if we can get back into that area, 920 to 05, that's where we really need to be paying some attention. Initially to the sell side. 1 minute until the open. The 15-minute doesn't really add a whole lot for us that we haven't already seen. We've already seen the POCs. We've already seen those shifts. We've already seen the failures. It's fairly obvious we're looking for that rotation back up. It doesn't add a whole lot of clarity. So Asian and Euro session are down stacked. So sellers are, again, they've got the bias. We can see it. This is showing global, right? Okay. Yeah, those seats were crazy expensive on the way. I mean, it ended up working, but it was not cheap by any means. Now we're coming back into that same spot. Why my charts are all out of whack? There, that's why I wasn't seeing the line. I'm like, what am I missing? Why isn't this showing up? That's why. Don't have to be so incredibly huge, though. More continuation of the downside after the open now. As far as this move down goes from a trend perspective, the Asian session, I mean, we really didn't have a swing high until there. L5. Down into an L2. Now they're churning back up a little bit. So far on this rally higher, the POC shifted at 850. Not exactly a pleasant spot to have that POC for him, huh? S&P trying to lift back up. We've got 4182. Let me get rid of those old drawings, though. I don't want those to mess with my current take. There we go. More continuation to the upside. Whoa, look at that vault. Whoa, where did that come from? Jeez. Yeah, we just slapped a volume node up there. Right above the highs, too. So that would tell me, at least at the open volume's a little bit funky, but that would tell me that sellers tried accumulating stops at the highs. With that one giant chunk of volume in one specific spot. Sellers need to hold it underneath that if they're going to win that fight. You can see them continuing to push off it. It wasn't enough to shift the POC. What a fist fight. Over on the 5 minutes so far, as far the first volume goes. I mean, yeah, that one giant volume node's going to be pretty straightforward, huh? I doubt they're going to change that. Never say never. But that 13,870 volume that just jumped out of nowhere, that's probably going to dominate that first 5 POC. We still have a minute and a half. Looking for the mark to back up to the 13,850s if the buyers are going to try to take this back up. And if it fails below the 850s, that will add a significant amount of proof for the sellers to try to take another leg lower. Probably to actually test that 1850 low this time. That volume just all pummeled in one spot. They're back again. Ooh, they poked through it. All right. Now they're above the 70s. Oh. Uh-oh. They closed above it. Can they take it back down again? They're in a fight right now. I still like the zone more up in the 905s, but this is an area... Oh, POC just shifted. 13,870. Sellers potentially taking it lower now. In the short term, sellers will be looking for a continuation move to the downside. I would prefer like an entry closer to 70. Well, I don't think I have to go to that. See if we can get a jump back up into the 70s for a pop back down. I like this for a continuation for the downside. Sellers trying to rotate it lower. We know shorts are interested. That POC showing up all in one spot. Jeez. Now, what's interesting, utilizing volume, we're actually seeing profit taking on this move up, but just one giant node for the POC. So it's actually kind of difficult to say that's accumulation. This would be profit taking above this node. We still kind of would be more beneficial to get underneath those 50s. See if they can do a quick snap retest into the 70s. Starting to break above it. They got to churn back down. Oh, got whacked right at the end of the candle. That was a big volume shift. They just jumped ship. I'm out. I don't want it. No, thank you. That's an emergency exit. I hit the brakes, exit, close all kind of moment right there. Do you see how fast they shifted the volume? It might pull back, but unfortunately for me, I don't have those infinite money hacks. I can't just continuously build in over and over and over and double down and double down. It doesn't work. They did allow a break-even test, so they did come back to these 870s. Watch this area, though. Ooh. back underneath it. They might have duped me out of it. We'll see. I'm going to need a bit more proof now, though. Especially noting that the volume still hasn't confirmed really an accumulation yet, although it's getting close. See if the buyers can take it up or what they want to do here. I don't like it from the bull side yet. I would need a lot more proof than that. From the sell side, that was a bit too risky to hang on to. Whoa. To the tick rejection at 870 now. Now they're sporting accumulation volume. POC shifting. POC shifting down. 13,865 now. So we have a fresh POC again. Now we've got to wait for it to get away from this one. Sheesh. What about just up to the highs? Where did they end up stalling that one out? Still at the 70s? Yeah. Another strong bear bar down here, and the bulls are going to have a heck of a time holding it up. $870s. They got to go one way or the other. They're back above it now. If this is sellers, remember, they kind of had weird, sort of funky volume going on here. And this is, at the moment, a lower high. And the POC's back at 70 again. All right, well, I guess it doesn't matter. Decisively breaking away back to the upside. Likely a lot of shorts are starting to realize, uh-oh. I mean, I'm pretty sure we already realized that. But, again, this is a lot of extra proof. Now it's obvious. So if we can get a pullback before hitting this 905, a pullback back down to those 870s to allow those earlier shorts to readjust for a continuation back up into resistance, that would be the point now where we've got the proof. I didn't get a single fill on any of my crypto setups yesterday. Not a one of them. I hate when I set pending orders overnight, hoping to wake up to at least a few of them, and all I see is active orders still full. Like, dang it. As far as risk tolerance goes, realistically, 58.75 would be a logical point of interest. And upside continuation would be back up to 92.50, which is right at the top. So I'm going to go a little inside that. $76.25 is technically the 2-to-1 actual, which is like non-existent. It makes a lot more sense to see this one to migrate back up to the highs anyway. They've got to get that resistance up there at the 905s to load up the sellers. Phenomenal continuation bounce to the upside. Now let's see if they can follow through. I'll lock in the 2-to-1 actual risk now just because it is in such a great spot. And I'm going to continue on up with this. Up in the 80s. All right, taken out. Beautiful reversal play. Phenomenal. I mean, it's so hard to get a much better textbook play than that. Again, the wider objectives are still further up. I only grabbed one because I was taking it as a swing. And the reason why I like it there and the reason why I was okay with exiting early is because if you measure, the actual risk that I had to take was almost non-existent. But that measurement here was a 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 3-to-1, and it was just creeping up into the 4-to-1, which is why I locked in the 3. So from an actual risk perspective, it was a 3-to-1. From the full initial risk perspective, that was closer to like a 0.5-to-1 more on the scalp side. I still would like to see them go back up to the 905s. I don't necessarily think this is done. Hard to argue with a nice clean little bounce like that, though. And see if they can get a continuation back up off of these 870s or if they're going to fail back down. I still really want them to get up to those 905s, but they can't separate away from this 5-minute volume to save their life. Yeah, not to mention the 870s, by the way, is the first 5 volume node on top of everything else. We do have a new high. So if we continue back up to the new high, our POC is now hovering at 38. I'm sorry, 38. 1387, 870. It's the same price, no change. Yeah. This is why when I'm looking at building into even these types of trades, I'm always watching where those 2-to-1s are. You don't want to mess with those. The 2-to-1s on an algorithmic side, keep in mind, we're looking at a 500-tick chart. This is not the realm of humans more often than not. When these little microscopic moves are going on, we're not fast enough to take advantage of those types of things. So you're going to see a lot more of that, like algos utilizing quick snap decision-making things. Like, oh, it went 2-to-1, I'm going to lock 1-to-1. 3-to-1, lock 2-to-1. 4-to-1, lock 3-to-1. It's very mechanical when you're on this time scale. Back down to 13,870, close directly on top of it. That proves about 0. We do have a little bit of an undertow. I wanted it to climb higher into the 905s. They might not be able to get it done. Buyers are trying to get this to creep back up. Seems like they're fighting over 77. Pretty heavy right here. You can see that volume pop in there. Ooh, quick shift. Now they're above the 77s. That was the fight zone. I want to see if they can get a quick little scalper snap back into those 77s for a pop higher. Looking for a continuation rotation. Back above, but I want to see them hold their ground above these 77s, and if they can't, then I'm going to have a hard time staying interested. Yeah, they lost them. I'm going to jump ship. Tried grabbing the pullback, but didn't really want to play my minuscule. Of course, yeah, now that I'm out, thanks, NASDAQ, you rotten bugger. Man, it looked like they were going to slide the low and then just popped right back up again. Vindictive SOB of a market, man, I tell you. Yeah, of course, that's how it plays. Right after you get out. Now, remember, a lot of traders will still be looking at that 77 thinking, Been long since he opened? Oh, for sure. Yeah, since he opened from the longer perspective, like on an options or an out-of-the-money call at the highs, 100% I'm with you. From a futures perspective, for me personally, I have a little bit of a harder time with that. I like, when I'm looking at options, I like those longer-term moves where I don't really have to look at it too much, or like when I look at it from here, it's, oh, yeah, oh, okay, it's right around this area. Pretty straightforward kind of stuff. But totally agree with you, yeah. It would have been nicer to see 1850s, but you can see the rejection down there is nasty. They're coming back into those 77s. These 77s are still a fight. All right, Bull's trying to grab it for the move up. I didn't get a fill. Let's even get a quick little back flush then. I tried hitting the bid, but it ran away from me too quick. Again? No fill again. Oy. I'm sorry, NASDAQ. What did I do? Who do I have to apologize to? I'm sorry. Jeez. Hey, Steven, how's it going? Got in the dips pre-market? Oh, nice. Yeah, definitely then. You're in way before me. Ride that bugger out. On this daily, man, if this thing turns into a big bull bar back up to all or the retest at 2475, oh man, it could be a really fun ride. They still got to get through those 910s, 920s, but back above the Euro session lows. And now into a, albeit minor, swing high. Maybe even a little bit of a wedge top up there if they want to climb a bit further. There was a lot of orders that dumped up at 94. Jeez. $894 just got wailed on up at those highs. Deeper pullback potentially coming. Again, that doesn't invalidate the buyers. It's just we've got the rotation off the L3, which again is okay. They got a secondary rotation off of L3. Then we've got the L1s, L2s, L1s. Deeper dip into the L2. Maybe we do finally get that little bit of a dip back into the into a deeper L3 again. It hasn't really broken away above the highs to prove it. Buyers will likely be trying to buy into this pullback here. In the 83s, 84s. $10 o'clock around the corner in 10 minutes. Now, the buyers pretty aggressively defended that zone. I'm kind of curious to see if they can hit those 83.75s again and support. Otherwise, I would like to see at least a two-legged correction, which is what we're missing right now. That would be right back to the 70s again. Sheesh. Stacking them up. Buyers still likely buying into this dip, accumulating into the dips. I mean, it makes sense. If we look at the volume off of the top to current, yep, POC right at the bottom so far. And you can see them building the whole way up. Look at the accumulation volume, plain as day. All the way down. Now they're starting to break underneath. Their POC's at 80. So likely at this point, they've built their average down into a position that they're okay with sitting on for right now, around the 80s. Maybe they add a few underneath it, but they're going to hang out for a minute around these 80s and just kind of let it work itself out. We do have the two-legged correction back and a bottom-weighted POC at around the 880s. Well, lower-weighted. Now the POC shifting again, 82.75. They still got more work to do. Now it's back down to the 80s. See, they still have a bit of a fight. If they're going to form a solid POC, it shouldn't jerk around that much. There's too many other levels that are close. Might still need some time to kind of work things out. There we go. Now they've got some obvious continuation back to the upside. They did hold off of those 70s again. Do you see where they bounced? Euro session highs attempting to reject a little bit. I want to see a deeper move. I mean, it's obvious that buyers are trying to get something going. Whoa. 88 or 880. POC just flushed to the downside again. A lot of volume coming in. See if they can get that move down into the 70s. What's the full name of the POC? Point of control. Which is why people say POC. When the action's hot, I have a hard enough time talking English rather than like saying a full mouthful full like that, you know? Jeez. 13,880 is the zone at the moment. So far, sellers are maintaining pressure underneath it. In the way that it formed, I don't think buyers are necessarily out yet. I think they're just kind of sitting. They're waiting. They're still building a little bit here and there, right, on these deeper moves, but ooh, now here we go. Now we've got some clean separation back above the 880s. They've got some proof. That looks awesome. If they can close a couple more candles like this, yeah. Looking for those 80s for a quick snap bounce back to the upside again. Huge volume dump at 80. Holy crap. Bulls still trying. A little bit of a dip underneath, potentially attempting to invalidate. Short-term invalidation. Reducing size a little bit. Waiting to see if they want to jump back above 80 for a reposition or if it's an exit, though. Big volume dump just hit there. I'm out. I got to see a little bit more. It looked like the buyers were trying to separate away, but then they just flushed underneath that so aggressively. Again, everything is saying deeper pullback. Wait for the deeper pullback. It just hasn't happened yet. And then they do this kind of stuff. Back up again. Scalpers might still look for that 88 bounce again. Quick snap rotation back to the upside. I want the deeper pullback. Looking across the board here, the S&P, the euro is sliding a bit further down. 2-to-1 actual risk now widens a little bit further up towards those highs, 21,280. As far as anything else, there's not really much else going on, really. Bitcoin's screaming higher right now. Ooh. Bitcoin's going on a rodeo. I didn't get any of those fills last night. Ugh. What is going on with my charts? Hello? Sheesh. There we go. Dogecoin to the moon, yep. You better believe it. Bitcoin dominance rising, yep. All right, they're trying to gain a little bit more separation away. Is that really the name of the song? Thank you. I'll check it out. Oh, that's got to be my favorite now. Bilbo Swaggins. Oh, that's great. Big continuation breakout to the upside. So it seems like they're really messing around with these averages. They're not as clean today, so there are a few notes to be had. I am exiting very quickly, so the losses are minuscule. And the wins have been great when they do work out. So as far as the approach goes, I mean, I'm following the trade plan the way that at least I'm supposed to be, at least from a numbers perspective. It's just been a B and a half to get this thing to actually go. And when it finally does, it's after I've gotten out. Like, within seconds. Do. That's so my life. Yeah, I know, right? Oy vey. This week's been a harder one. This week has not been the easiest of weeks by any means. Still making it work, but what's my accuracy this week? 58.43%. Yeah, definitely got my teeth kicked in a little bit this week. Still, I mean, on the positive, but that's way lower than my norm. So I'm personally at least having difficulties. Sticking with the trade plan has helped keep things in the up and up, but it's just one of those weeks. What's up, honey? All right, sorry about that. We are in the pocket. We are in the hot pocket. This is where sellers are going to be looking for a reason. Just give them an excuse. I think realistically, if Doge is going to go up, it's going to be significantly sooner than later. This is the area where they would realistically take it significantly further up, with the caveat of everything else going nuts as well. Plus, looking at the 4-hour chart on Doge, this looks like, and I say looks like because it hasn't confirmed yet, could be a massive 4-hour bear trap. So me personally, I like Doge to the upside from right around here, the 31, 32 cent mark for a continuation back up. Again, with the caveat of looking at the daily chart over here on the 4-hour, and you can see this massive attempt that the sellers tried, right? They built their POC up at the highs. This measures to over here, just so that we're on the same page. Measures to this bear bar on the lows. So the way that this is drawn is from the top to the bottom. This would be the assumption that buyers are trying to build in. They couldn't even break underneath the bull bar's low. I mean, you know, like, geez. This has just broken above, so if it does want to pull back, that would be the zone, but it's so close, and that would get that trigger in for the sellers underneath that bear bar to then just steamroller face over right back to the upside. We still have to wait for that to happen, obviously, but the 4-hour chart hasn't confirmed it, but we are above that volume cluster, and realistically, the 31 cent point is going to be the zone of interest. All three indexes in tandem down about 0.3. Yep. Where did my other window go? Hang on. Oh, there it is. Let's get this right there. What do you think the upside for Doge could be? As far as the upside for Doge, I mean, realistically, at least back up towards the 30... I mean, I think the 32 cent mark is feasible, but looking at the way that this is forming, I mean, it wouldn't take a whole lot to see this thing go catatonic, right? If we look at the overall volume from the most recent move from top to bottom, make that a little more refined, huh? The volume was built up at the top. So a likely objective if the bulls are going to take it back up to those 38 cent, 39 cent mark, which still offers up, where are we? From there to the 30, it's a 25% move. Non-leveraged. You know, like, that's insane. For a risk of what? I mean, if it breaks down much further than some of these previous bull bars and this low, it's a 7... like maybe a 10% risk for at minimum 20% to the upside, 2 to 1. It's closer to 23, 24, and if it cracks above that POC, then you've got all-time highs, which is 45%, and then through that is who knows, you know. I would look at Doge like a lottery ticket. I think that's the safest way to look at it when you're looking at Doge. But realistically, I mean, think about the context, right? You're talking about the internet. You're talking about the generation that was raised in the internet with meme culture, right? Like, it's in our DNA. Like, this, it makes sense. I could see it. You know, there might actually be more to the hype than just hype. We had that initial drive. We had the first pump. Typically in these pump and continuation scenarios, this is where it's got to continue or fail. And this is that we're there right now. Speaking of, same could be said for the NASDAQ. This is the major zone of resistance on the NASDAQ for the fast, or from the larger picture. We're coming back into that zone from like the 905s. This is where puts will be looking for shorts, although I'm a little bit late to the party, looking for continuation to the downside, and the objective at least back down to the 870s, but potentially all the way down to those 1850s. Follow Elon Musk tweet, yeah. Having a tough time trading gold this whole month for me. Not sure due to the crypto. Gold is, I mean, gold's a tough one. You know, gold's a weird market when it comes to everything else going on. Like, do you want to stick with gold? Is that the actual safety net? Or do you stick with Bitcoin now? You know, that is a definite thing. Crypto's putting a kink in it, for sure. Honestly, even the thought of getting out of... and when I say this, let me fully explain before everybody like has a panic attack. Getting out of futures, in the sense of utilizing crypto exchanges instead. So US exchanges and all of those, obviously with futures is not that big of a deal. There's no PDT or anything like that. But having companies like Binance offer stock tokens and things that are traded on crypto instead of US dollars means that there's no PDT. And that means that basically everybody on the planet can now trade whatever they want in massively fractional sizes because of thanks to Bitcoin, right? You can trade, I don't know what the fractional size is on Binance, but incredibly low share sizes so that anybody effectively can trade. That kind of influx is, I mean, think about what happened when they got rid of fees. Look at the influx that had. Times that by like a lot more for all of the people who have been waiting for PDT to burn in the depths. And it just hasn't been. It's just stuck. Never goes away. This is their chance to kind of fight back against that. Talk about a mass exodus from exchanges. You want to know why futures exchanges are trying to get crypto on their board so fast? They know what's up. If they don't, bankruptcy's around the corner. Selling house in 2 weeks. If I had the I would doge it to the moon, but I don't want to make it dump. Yeah, I mean, what was that guy? He sold everything. He put it on Litecoin, if I remember. That was back when it was at like $60. I wonder how he did. Did he hold out? Or did he get annihilated when it went to 30? I hope not. It's like that Bitcoin pizza guy. Like, how much the pizza costs now? Market dipping back down into the previous POC cluster and finding support there for buyers to continue back to the upside. If we look at the more recent accumulation dip that we've got going on from top to bottom over here. Oh, POC weighted at the top. Euro is starting to dip down into the break point, getting close. I do like this really deep dip on the euro from a risk perspective. It draws your average down without having to risk almost anything. It's a nice little spot here. More continuation to the upside for the NASDAQ. That 905 resistance, this retest is going to be a big deal. This is the area where sellers are looking for, and they've already been handed proof. I didn't get filled. All right. To the tick. Let's see if we can get a little bit more momentum back to the upside for a push back down. It's only able to grab one. From a scalper's perspective, looking for like that quick 10 to 15 flush. Nice little scalper's dip, but not able to get much more than that so far, and I was only able to grab the one. From the put side of things, from the option side of things, this is a big zone. Remember, long-term zone implications here. Another way to approach it, actually, now that I think about it, would be from the micro side. I keep talking about the options. I always forget about the micro. I love the micros. I don't know why I forget about them in these scenarios. It's a perfect example for an area to use them in. So from the swing perspective in this area, looking for the NASDAQ to the downside. Again, the downside objective is going to be around the 870s, which offers up... stops above like the 21. Jeez, that is a huge potential reward all the way back to the downside. Let's see. Make sure I'm on the right one here. So let me clarify this one. Swing short build via 15-minute. There we go. That way I don't have to keep explaining it. It's just there. Oh, hang on. Quick little new high. Full-size NASDAQ, the continuation back to the upside, breaking back into this zone. Scalpers were the only ones that were able to get anything going on that last rejection. Heavily in the zone still, just kind of hovering. His first obvious objective would be back down towards like the 88s. NASDAQ's been moving too much, totally neglecting the S&P today. I didn't even have the first 5-minute POC drawn. 80.50. Still hovering in the zone. Swings are still looking for the shorts. The downside continuation for the major objective. I mean, the most obvious one would be the 3 press lows. What do they do on this inclusive of the higher low? All right. So that would be the objective ahead of that POC down there. Mid-50s. Give or take. See if they can go down just a bit further. Bitcoin cracking up through the 55,500s, now in 56,000. Ethereum not really doing much, just kind of hanging out. 2750s. $10.20, $10.30-ish around the corner. Again, I have my daughter home, so probably going to wrap up a little bit earlier, just to, you know, hang out with her a bit too. But feel free to get those questions in. We'll get those covered for you. Fine. It hit it, didn't fill it. I'm not going to mess around with 3 ticks. First objective to the downside's done. No longer willing to accept risk if it breaks above another high, though. I'm willing to give back a little bit. We're hovering back and around the original break-even point. I keep forgetting. What is your Asian and Euro sessions? The Asian session, this cyan level, is from... Well, here, I'll just show you. Oh, or not. What the heck happened to my thing? Hang on. All right. Anyway, so the first session is from 6 to 8. 6 a.m. Or, I'm sorry, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Right after the open. and 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. for the Euro session. Again, time zones are always a little bit weird, but generally those are the areas that seem to be respected the most. So I try to stick with the same ones so that I'm at least repetitiously looking at the same thing, you know. Yeah, I guess technically it wouldn't be the Asian session. It would be, what would that be, Australian session? It's the first session after the market reopens, whatever one that is. Obviously, I don't trade it, so I don't really necessarily care what the session is. But the reason why I like that one specifically is those are the first candles that plot after it's opened again. So anybody who is waiting for it to open up, whether they were stuck in a position or in a position looking to take profit and they missed the bell or whatever, that's where those responses take place. So that first session when it opens up again, that's the one I like looking at for the first like 2 hours or so. All right, seeing what they want to do around this area here. Still hovering. We're in this zone of resistance. Sellers on the longer picture, again on more of the option side of things, are still in the zone. But if it breaks above it, that's going to be a pretty big problem. And longs will be looking for that same area roughly as a reversal point. I'm still hovering in those 905s. Eventually one side's got to show up. Sheesh. Still seemingly holding resistance off the highs. That top-weighted POC on that last swing is causing some issues here. Still kind of kicking around the 902s. Speaking of options, have you ever utilized the options on NinjaTrader? No, I did look at them. I as far as like I set up one of the demo feeds just to see how it all looked and how it felt, and I honestly I don't know. Maybe it's just a creature of habit. But if I'm going to be trading options, I typically do it on like Thinkorswim or Schwab or one of those types of exchanges. It's just I don't know. It just felt awkward. I'm sure I could get over that, but there wasn't anything wrong with it per se. Just a little different. Something I wasn't necessarily used to. And given that I wasn't really willing to commit, I didn't want to put a whole lot of time into it. So I just kind of left it at that. Does big money trade after 4 p.m. or do they start again at 9:30? They trade 24/7. hedge funds, HFTs, the billion-dollar Goldman JPs, all of them, they're 24/7. They have computers that do it for them. They have traders all around the world that do it for them. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. There's a market that's open and they'll be trading it. They have to be a little bit more careful, right? Like you don't just want to drop a $1 billion order at 8 p.m. Probably not a good idea. But, aside from the common sense stuff, it's, yeah, they definitely do. This almost feels like it just needs a quick little break-even poke. Kind of curious. If we do go down to another new low, though, I'm not willing to accept it coming back anymore. This would be the second time that it's pulling back against me. I'm not interested if it makes another new low. Obviously, given where how teeny tiny the risk that I'm looking at giving back on is. POC still hovering at the 902s, buyers staying above it. Hang on, I think it sounds like my screen door is open, just flapping in the wind. Hang on one second, be back. Yep, sure enough. All right. I believe that move higher is enough to take me out on the NASDAQ. Yep. So I'm out on the remainder of that one. Couldn't get the follow-through run. Got a great starting run, but didn't want to finish the job. Yep, and there she goes. Everybody did the same thing. They got the original one. They're just trying to get a little icing on the cake. What happened yesterday between 12 and 3? Is that just sellers getting out of the way? Tips on trading situations like that. What happened? Oh, gotcha. Hang on one second. Let me get a clean chart first. Just to prevent issues. It seems like there's already issues. Man alive, my NinjaTrader is lagging like a beast right now. Is it because of all of these charting platforms I've got open? Maybe that has something to do with it, huh? Let me minimize that. Actually, before I answer those, let me go over the numbers for the week really quick, and then we'll go into that. So I'll hit the training questions in just a second. It's a good question. Just per normal for the week. This is where we're at for the week. Again, dollars and bills and all that garbage aside, just looking at the percentages to make sure that we're trading correctly and that I'm sticking to my plan as necessary. So looking at my average this week sucks. 58.89 minus 1. So 50... What? Hang on. Let me stop having a blonde moment here. It's Friday. Give me a break, all right? I was trying to figure out what happened. I'm like, something's at 50 and 50 does not make 100 and... okay, negative 41.11 times the average losing trade was 40 ticks. So 1644. And then the average winning, which was 58.89 times 37, minus 1644.4. So again, you can see it's a difficult week. Normal weeks, like we've seen in the past, have been around like a plus 1,000, minus 1,000, plus 900, minus 900. I think there was only one minus one, but they're always around that area. This time around, like we've been talking about, it's been a little bit of a more difficult week, and you can see it reflected in the numbers. But still, a positive number demonstrates that at least the trade plan was still effective, still following the numbers. There's nothing wrong from that perspective, nothing out of whack. So, although it feels like it was a difficult week, I can see it reflected in the numbers that it was a difficult week. Still traded it appropriately, which is the important part. So let me get back to the other question. So I'm going to switch over to a fresh workspace. Oh, and by side note, that doesn't include the Euro long, which is still active, by the way. That doesn't include that yet. Speaking of. Actual risk is a little lower now. Let's get some objectives back up into that area. There we go. Okay, let me get to a fresh screen real quick and load up something new. What's something that I haven't... Well, no, you're asking about a specific situation, so something new would be kind of stupid. Let me load up the one that you're actually requesting. Hang on. Volumetric. What time frame are you looking at? Between 12 and 3. I'm assuming probably a faster one. 500 tick, maybe? I'll let Doge stare at you while I answer, or wait for the answer. The all-seeing Doge. All right. Let's get that. Oh, where did... Oh, hang on a second. Popped it way off the screen. Hang on. There we go. So first off, let's delete all of the stuff that we don't need. I don't want to see globals. Those are going to mess with things. I don't need the zones. Just base price action. You're talking yesterday between 12. I mean, it's pretty obvious to see where you're talking about, right? Between this gigantic drop to the downside. So from 12 to 3, basically that span right there where it just ripped through the lows. So there's a few things that, in terms of approach, you have to kind of keep in mind. It depends on what side of the fence you're on, if you're a buyer or a seller. So I'll go over both because it's good to know both. We're specifically, again, focusing on, I'll just highlight the area, this to here. So what we need to do, the big move up. Did I do it backward? Oh, 12 to 3. Sorry, dyslexia kicking in. Hang on, 12 to 3. That one went backward. My bad. Can't help it. It's my brain. It does funny things sometimes. So we've got this really strong rally to the upside. Totally different context. Again, glad we got that one clarified. So as far as the movement goes here, we've got this really strong leg to the upside. And we've got to take the before that, right? What happened before that? Well, obviously, this down move had a really nice drive to the lows, although the secondary drive was kind of weak. They've got some pretty good bearishness. So I want to see, what were they doing on this move down? From top to bottom, obviously, there's probably going to be a POC somewhere inside here if I were to park it there. Those are buyers likely buying the lows or sellers taking profit, whatever. But I want to see what happens all the way down to the low. What kind of context did they give on that way down? Seems like they did build, obviously, right there. We've got another zone of interest that built up in here. Little small one right there. Another big chunk with the POC, which is right there. And then we've got another blast, and then they broke underneath that and continued lower. So we got to pay attention to what did the volume do in this area. Well, realistically, if we look at the major volume nodes, technically speaking, it was accumulation volume up to 13,925. Below that was distribution. So in terms of, yeah, have a good one. In terms of the way that this is moving, the accumulators were buying down to the 13,925s, and that would tell me that they weren't really looking to do much underneath that area, letting it ride, giving it some time, figure out what they want to do from there. So from the bulls' perspective, they were built into here, and underneath this, there really wasn't a reason to do much of anything. And I want to see, what did they do on this rally up? They obviously stopped there. It stopped dead in their tracks for a little bit. But I want to see, you know, how are they going to respond to that area? That's what they were building into on the way down. So if that's their average, and that's where they're long from, how are they going to respond when it gets back to break even? Do they exit? Right? Give us a little bit of a clue. If we expand a little bit further to just this little sub higher low inside here, the POC is hovering at the 925s. So, I mean, same spot. Again, accumulation up to that point, distribution underneath. Although it did build up quite a bit down here, it wasn't enough to change that viewpoint. Although, looking a little bit closer, you can see in the short term, now we've got a bit of accumulation volume down here. That wasn't there before we got rid of that. Still in the distribution phase, but something to note, at least. I didn't have enough time to really do anything because it went screaming out of here. So from the perspective of the shorts, sellers are going to be looking to sell back into it, right? They want to be able to sell back in and get another leg to the downside. So I want to see, where do they do that from? They built a massive POC pretty far down. That doesn't help the sellers by any means. Let's go a little further. Nothing yet. Distribution volume. Well, a little bit of accumulation phasing going on. Not enough to shift the POC or anything. Let's go a little further. Still accumulation volume, but the POC is still down here. Not anything yet. Let's go a little further up. Same thing. Let's go all the way up to the top. Same thing. POC still down there. Man alive, they parked a lot of volume down there. Jeez. So this is a really big clue, because so far they haven't shifted the POC yet, right? We've got this massive POC, which is down here at the 13,840s. And if we look at the overall volume cluster, we can see accumulation volume going up, meaning, to answer your question, when the market is going higher and volume is increasing, so going up and volume increasing on the order, draw the arrow the right way, that would be accumulation to me. If the volume is going the opposite direction while the market's going up, that would be distribution. So if we look at it in this context here, right, from here kind of down was a little bit of distribution inside here. They were offloading some contracts. And then they started building up again. Here, they were building the whole way up. They kind of gave up right there. It's like, all right, well, game over, I guess. It's going to lighten the load a little bit. Inside here, again, you can see accumulation phasing even more aggressively up to, I mean, the whole way up, really. Underneath that, we had accumulation phasing in the opposite direction. Buyers. So when volume is going up, that's accumulation from an assumption point of view. Again, it's all assumption-based. But that's the way that I look at it, at least. So when I say accumulation or distribution, that's what I mean. So in this example here, we've got this continuation up, and we want to pay attention, you know, what are they doing around those 925s? If we park this move up, we can see there is a massive amount of volume that came in at the 925s. That was kind of the pinnacle. Actually, that was the pinnacle point of that accumulation. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a problem. Sellers were trying to build in, utilizing that as a resistance, and they gave up. Started building in a little bit more. So I'm kind of curious. Now let's go to this next high, because these volume nodes, this is something that I don't like seeing when it's really jerky. Got this big point here, big point here, big point here, all of these really nasty points. Although it's fairly obvious because you can just draw lines across them and it makes it straightforward. The overall movement inside of here it's jerky. You like to see them more as bubbles, right? You let them kind of flesh themselves out a little bit. So if we creep this forward to that next lower high and see what happens while they start driving down. Oh, geez. They shifted the POC up at the top. So they finally got the POC shift. And here again, they fleshed out the bubble at the highs. But you can see accumulation volume, a little bit of distribution above that. But if we go even further down, this has been accumulating since way down here. And now it falls in line. I've got so many freaking lines on here. Hold on. Now it falls in line with that previous move. Let me redraw that one. All the way down here. It lines up like it was a trend line. It came all the way out and hit it. And the fact that the market responded bearish, when you start to get to, and I'm not saying, like, obviously in hindsight, yes, it obviously responded bearish. But when you're getting to, like, here is an example, right? Because you can't cheat. When you're dealing with real time, you can't just bump the chart forward and see what happened. You got to go with it from here. So if you're approaching it from here and the POC just top weighted, right? Because this is drawn up to just this high. That's it. Nothing past this. You now have a realization that, wait a minute. That's a move up and volume is increasing. And now we're below that POC. That's a problem. We've got some red flags. They finally shifted the POC off the low. So if they do fall, where's their objective? Probably back down to the POC. Right? That would make sense. It took forever for them to finally get the thing to shift. So it makes sense that a lot of objectives are still hovering around that 840. So a lot of sellers will be looking for a response off of this zone to try to reverse the market back down. Now, this is assuming that this is also off of another level, which, I don't know. I'm just looking at the 500 tick right now. But so sellers will be looking to sell this area. They've gained proof, right? And they got the objective. Ooh, they got a little bit more of a push down. Back inside and then rolls up to where it is now. So it was fulfilled, right? They got the objective to the downside. They did finally shift their POC up, but put yourself in the shoes of sellers. Common sense. If I was short here for ages, add a little more, add a little more, add a little more, add a little more. My average is still down here. I can't get my stupid average to shift. The market just keeps going. Finally, I've got enough time to shift my POC up. That's when the market rolls. Where's it going to? If it took me ages to finally get the stupid thing to roll down, well, likely I'm going to be taking profit at where I entered in along the way. There are some entries around here. There's some entries around here. There's a big little bump right there. You see that wick that popped out? Little one right there. Nice little bump there. I'll just take the peak of that one, although there were a few. Obviously, that one right there was a big one. And another bump right there. So on the way down, now that their average is here, profit, 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 profit. They might have still been in all the way up, and you can kind of see. Let's see what they did. They got the lows, and it's migrated all the way back up to where it is now. Yep, you can see them. Accumulation volume building up. Shorts were trying to get it to go short from 880. Even though the POC is not going to take much to shift higher. That's like 2 contracts difference. Even then. Still, accumulation volume up to around there. Now, the interesting thing is we did not see distribution above this high. We see more accumulation. Sellers are still building. Like, nah, we're going to get this to go back down. What's their objective, though, right? Put yourself in the shoes of those sellers. Their POC's here. Not going to take much to shift it here. So, realistically, if they're building a lot here and they can shift the POC up to this point, their objectives, same thing. First target, second target, maybe a third, maybe a fourth, back down to the lows, new low, etc., all the way down. So the way to approach that essentially is a lot of patience, waiting for them to finally show up to the party and shift the POC, give you the proof, etc. And even if you waited like for an incredible amount of proof, like this whole move down, guess where it came back to? And that's stupid. It's fantastic, but it's stupid in a good way. Isn't that nuts? Now, for me, these are areas why I talk about options in these areas, because I don't know that this is going to happen like this, right? I mean, let's be fair. It looks awesome in hindsight now that it actually rolled off the area and it looks good. Not like we highlighted this area or anything, cough, cough. But this is the zone and why I like options, because it could stick around here for a little while. With an option contract, if we're going to next week, obviously today's Friday, so next week options, they're not going to get hit by much delta decay. They're not going to get hit by time decay a whole lot because they still have a whole week. That's not going to happen until later at the end of the day. So even if it does do all of this, you're not going to lose a whole lot of value by it going sideways. Now, that does also mean that if you're trading next week's option by it dropping lower, you're also not going to gain as much. Whereas if you were trading like today's option, that'd be like a 50% ROI. Trading next week's, it's closer to like maybe 10. But, There's some trade-offs. So these zones, you know, even if you are late to the party, and you miss this entire response off of this, maybe you weren't here earlier in the morning, or maybe you weren't here when it was hitting the zone. We were talking about this area as you know, whatever. This would be a zone where now we already know we've got proof. We've got more proof. So if the market can come down, right, we've got accumulation volume. All we need is to flesh this out a little bit more. Make this whole thing accumulation volume, build a POC up here, then you're good to go. That's going to take a minute. Right? So in order for me to go short, like as far as like missing the boat and not selling up in this area, then, I mean, realistically, you've got a little time yet. There's no reason to be doing anything crazy right now. The party's just starting. DJ's not even there yet. So does that kind of make sense? I know it was a long-winded response, but a lot of it comes down to just giving it some time, letting the market kind of work itself out and tell you what it wants to do. And if it tells you that they were wrong and they're reversing, it'll show you that too, right? I mean, it's both sides. Here is a really, really good example. Shorts were looking for continuation off the 905s. They could not get that area to continue off of the 905s. So now that we've broken above it, what do you think they're likely to do? They're going to start exiting down here. So scalpers, I mean, this is a 15-minute reversal zone, so, I mean, it's not going to be much of a swing area by any means. You can see the swing areas further down here. Man, that looks nice. But this would be the area where we've now broken through resistance, and it comes back and acts as support. Why does it act as support? Because sellers who were trying to sell there earlier got out. That's why. Structure at its finest. We're now back in this zone. Why do you think it's bouncing? At least initially. Doesn't mean that it can't still chop around here for the rest of the day, but they cut through it. All right. Well, that's going to do it. As for the week, for the weekend, etc. All things considered, it was an okay week. It was a little bit tough, but we came out the other end with the light at the end of the tunnel. It didn't turn out to be a train, which is nice. So it worked out okay. Fingers crossed for a bit more consistent price action next week. Hopefully the FOMC stuff, now that it's behind us, will help with that. Side note, buyers, you've got like a double bottom, higher low potential. It's still super early, but that's the area. So anyway, with that out of the way, like we always say going into the weekend, take some time away from the markets, right? I know it's in our blood. We're addicted, whatever. But we make more decisions in a day than most people make in a week. You got to give yourself some mental break so that you can come back next week ready to rock and roll. Don't overexert. Have some rest. Do something fun over the weekend. Do something different. And we'll see you all back on Monday, all right? Enjoy. Rest up. And we'll talk to you all then. Thanks. Have a good one.